Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. It's such a pleasure to have all of you here. Right. My name is Guguletu Klaba, your host today. We are very excited that you've joined us, and this is on recording mode. So I hope those that are not here will actually catch up with us as we are already just beginning. Mr. Ndlovu, are you here? Mr. Ndlovu and Mr. Gogo. Are you here, brothers?
Present, teacher.
Oh, that is very good, my student.
Yes, we are here, sir.
Now, thank you so much. I thought before we start with our session today, we are going to be looking at Indaba Eseguduwini, a very controversial matter by the Constitutional Court. As you are all aware that there is a ruling that came out. I'm saying controversial because there's been a lot of talks in our country regarding the issue of marriage and lobolo. I know others, but lobola, lobolo, and lobolo, which is the dowry, and everything that relates to it. I'm not expecting this thing, and but there are people who are going to be guiding us today, as I mentioned, that we're going to be starting a series on this particular topic and subject. Essentially, as you know, that we do get married and marry in community of property, which is COP or antenuptial contract, ANC, and there's these types of marriages that we are all aware of in our sort of like have to distribute wealth in case of divorce or in case of death. Dear brother Baba Shoban, who is here with us today, who's going to be enlightening us about this particular ruling as to what it means, because I have picked up during my conversations with a lot of people that they are very much afraid. You are now supposed to be like married, and therefore, even if you are not there during the lobola ring process, but the fact that you are now part of this, ruling that the Constitutional Court has decreed upon or issued, you therefore are considered married. And all those types of things, I really don't understand what's happening here. But I've asked my fundis to come here and explain to us in simple terms what exactly this means. But more than that, I've asked them to say, let's start a series where we're going to look at issues of marriage regimes, as it were, like I've just explained, to say, what does it exactly mean to be married in community or out of community, and all of those types of contracts. This is going to help us to really get to understand how do we run our own businesses in our families. Because here we are mainly talking about business and entrepreneurship. There are many people who are married in COP, and when they go down, maybe a male, a brother, or a husband is very much driven. He gets into business. He owes SARS. He starts owing so many creditors, and things get sour, and everybody else just follows right along, and the whole family just collapses because you are married under this regime of the community of property. And what if you have got a kid, a child, as they would say, out of wedlock, or a child outside, and you are not able to therefore disclose that? We're talking practical and real issues in our families. And then you die. I made an example here when I was writing on the Facebook page, citing a real issue. And then I said, you are here dead, and then all of a sudden we know you two have had 2 kids, but there's 7 more kids that rock up, which you've been looking after, and you have not set up your house in order. Because the interesting thing about us as human beings is we are very much aware that we are headed to the cliff for our demise. At some point, we're going to exit or translate, depending what language you prefer, or die. And therefore, how do you want to see and set yourself up very well so that your house is in order and there's no fighting that happens once you're gone? Or you now decide to get into a polygamous relationship, as we know that it is allowed in our country, in our tradition and culture. You have got different spouses and all sorts of things. You do need to know very well, how do you deal with those things or handle such issues as a business person, because there will come a time when you really face up to the music, as it were, in terms of you passing on, and yet things that you've done before and whilst you were here in the flesh are not sorted out very well. That's why we're going to start this series of looking at the legalese and kind of setting ourselves up very well. And I'm sure the brother who's going to be presenting today, who I'm going to be introducing, will do justice in kickstarting us as we are moving with this particular series, wherein we're going to have to have a clear understanding of exactly what needs to be done and what needs to happen in our own families with that expert advice. But before we move into that crux of the wire today, I want us to talk briefly, just for 5 minutes. We have relaunched it, and I've got my colleagues here who've been tirelessly working on this website here, the Rural Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and some have been trying to log in. We've changed it, and they're going to make us aware what is our new website and how do we sort of like join and enlist ourselves as members. There's great things that we're going to talk about right towards the end of our program today. On that note, give over to Mr. Goqo, no Mr. Ndlovu, who are going to just be taking us through which it's in website yetentsha, kwenzakalani, sijoyina kanjani, siba kanjani, ama-members of Rural Chamber. Great things are in store, that I can tell you, for this year. We're fired up, we're excited, we're looking forward to 2026, 2027 year. We are looking forward to doing great things, and I'm going to be just sharing with you what is going to be happening down the road. Mr. Goqo, I'm sure you'd like me to give you hosting rights, right?
Yes, please. Yeah, you can give them to me. You can give them to me.
Okay, thank you so much. Over to you, my brother.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to Amandla Mnoto and Rural Chamber members. So we have, as Mr. Klaba has mentioned, that we have been working tirelessly on finding or on developing a new website for the Rural Chamber of Commerce's website. And this basically stems from the idea that we had with Mr. Klaba last year. We launched our platform there for managing memberships, and where you could sign up and register as a member of the Rural Chamber of Commerce. And along the way, we did pick up that we were having quite a lot of issues. We were having quite a lot of things that we needed to attend to. People experiencing, errors, not being able to log in, not being able to show their memberships. But then we decided that we need to do this thing thoroughly. And then we also need to move towards the shared vision that we are becoming, or the Rural Chamber is becoming a global player. It's not just a South African thing. So then we launched ruralchamber.africa. Let me just go to that link. So this is the link for the website. We still have just a few things that we need to tie up and sort out before we can fully allow members to register. But in the meantime, you can just visit the website You can browse through, you can see what you have. Join us functionality doesn't work at the moment. Those are the things that we are currently fixing, and we're looking at fixing them. And we'll announce during the course of the week when members can start registering. But members, this is the new website of the Rural Chamber. We would like to present to you. It's loaded with information. We are still going to load it with even more information, so that you know that when you get into the platform, it's not just a website, a plain website, but it is a place where you can get benefits as a member. And I think one of the things that we've been experiencing, Mr. Klaba would attest to this, was members asking what does it mean to be a member? What am I getting as a member? And we've also developed it in such a way that now, as members, there's information that will be loaded into your profile as a member. There's events that you will receive as a member. There's communication that you will receive as a member. So we've really refined our website so that in such a way that it caters for all members of the Rural Chamber, so that you do get the benefits of becoming, you enjoy the benefits of becoming the Rural Chamber of Commerce. So it is still a work in progress. So once we launch it fully, we will announce, and then we will get maybe 5 or 10 people that will register. They will go through it and see how it feels. What are the things that could be problems, so that we don't have the same problems we had before, where people were not able to register, or were able to register and their memberships were not allocated. So, Mr. Klaba, during the course of the week, we'll announce, and then maybe if you can provide us with maybe 5 or 10 individuals that we can use, or that will register, and then we'll sit closely with them, and then they can register on the site and tell us and give us feedback as to what was their feeling, did they find the process easier, what did they find challenging, so that we can look into such things as well. So as we know, we have multiple plans. I won't go through all of the plans we have, but the website has a dedicated page now, where you can view all the memberships that are available. And I think before, if you remember the previous one that we had, you had to go through a certain screen for you to log in. But with this one, so for you to be able to log in, you will just be able to log in within one system. So we have managed to merge all systems into a single system, where you will be able to log in, you'll be able to view your membership, you will be able to even do inquiries. And also, if you look at this homepage, we will also be able to view all the events that are coming. So if there's an event that is coming, so all events will be loaded into the website. So that is what we are currently working with. Next week, I do promise that we will be able to do a full demo where we can log in, register, log in, and then view all sorts of functionalities of the website. Thank you, Mr. Klaba. Mr. Klaba?
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Koko. Yeah, that is essentially what we wanted to share with you, that the website now is Rural Chamber Africa, right?
Yes, ruralchamber.africa.
Just repeat the website, my brother.
It is ruralchamber.africa. I will share it on the comments as well, or in the chat.
Yeah, it's ruralchamber.africa, so that you are aware that that's now our new website. And it's very important for you to be aware of that, so that when you go in there and join, understand that it has changed from .co.za to .africa. And we would like you to be clear about that.
And then just maybe one more thing, Mr. Klaba, that I might have left out, is that we are working on a way for members that were already members on the old one to be migrated in the new one. If we fail to do that, all we will ask them to do is just them to register on this new one, and then we can just find all the information and populate it on the new platform.
No, thank you so much for that. That helps a lot because there are people who may be confused about our change in terms of hosting as to what is going to happen to the information they've already given. Thanks for clarifying that, Mr. Koko. Appreciate it. Mr. Ndlovu, is there anything you want to add maybe over and above what Sfanele has mentioned?
I think he has covered it quite comprehensively in terms of what we're trying to achieve. As you would see in different tabs, we do cover various certain things, and we do highlight Uguti what is that you could benefit as a member, so that it's clear the value proposition that we do propose as a Mandom North and Rural Chamber, right? So that does come across on the application what exactly it is. And also once you've logged in, there are certain things that you would have privileged of because you're now a member. You'd see as you logged in and created your account, there are certain things like business trips that are upcoming and that discount that are attached to that by virtue of you being a member. And by you being a member as well, there are discounts that is going to be tied to your organization or to your level of membership. So those will come across quite nicely once one has signed in, and then you are seeing, because once you've signed in, there's a different page that you see as a signed in member, where you receive communications, where you receive a number of benefits, tangible benefits that you could use to realize the value that we're trying to drive home. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Ndlovu. I do want to emphasize that we already have started, as you know, that we are going to Taipei in March. And we would like members of the chamber in good standing to be part of this trip with us. We've already started giving discounts with our travel agent and the organizer of that particular conference. Some of you remember last year, just for 3 nights in Taipei, in what is called a Smart City Conference in Taiwan, it was only 40,000 rand for the flights, the hotel, with breakfast, as well as attending a gala dinner. That's seriously huge, special. But secondly, even this month, if you are still interested, it just went up by just 9,000 rand, which is now 49,000 rand, almost 50K. So if Ufunukamba, and maybe you've got municipality budgets for those that are working with municipalities, please, by all means, get in touch with us. But we are going to be starting to confine some of the benefits to members of Rural Chamber in good standing who are supporting the vision of Amandla Mnoto overall, to say some of the benefits, we're going to pass them to you for really assisting us. We are very sorry that it's taken some time and a few delays. It's all because these things require one to be really dedicated and full-time sometimes to sorting them out. But lastly, we are having a conference, Amandla Mnoto, as we announced last year, starting from the 26th of golf. And even for people who are golfers and being members of Rural Chamber, they'll get discounts. And for the conference itself, which is going to be fireworks type conference, we are going to give discounts only to the members in good standing, the Rural Chamber. Now, moving right straight into the topic for the day, the main topic of this topic I just mentioned here, marriage regime and the Constitutional Court ruling. I'm introducing my dear brother, Bongani Mashobane Mbulazi. He is the director of the Mashobane Advisory Services, where they unleash nothing else but excellence in corporate governance and legal services. He's a COO and head of legal services, where he's leading legal services team with a commitment to delivering reliable, efficient, and cost-effective solutions. Their services at Mashobane Consulting are really around governance advisory, creating and enhancing good corporate governance practices, legislative compliance, ensuring adherence to legal and statutory requirements, statutory compliance, managing compliance filings and regulatory obligations, as well as meeting administration, which has to do with professional support for board members and committee meetings. Their legal services are as follows: corporate and commercial law, cyber law, procurement law, including training and tender process management, contract management and implementation, competition law, aviation law, and they are absolutely amazing at delivering these services. I'm very happy that they are here with us today, and they are going to be our regular going forward because we are working together with the Mashobane Consulting. And I must mention that they sponsored our event, Amanda Umnoto, a few years ago, and we are so appreciative of them as the organization which really supports business and Black business in particular. And here am I presenting to Mr. Mashobane, who's going to take us through. Mashobane, this next 30 or so minutes is yours, my brother. Take us on.
Yes, morning, afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Klaba, for that warm welcome. I trust you can hear me.
Loud and clear. And I don't know whether would you like to present as well?
Not really.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight. Thank you. To highlight, this very, very important matter, especially for the forum, because it affects the businesses and the decisions that they make. So, Babkaba then asked me to just have a chat. It's going to be a discussion, really, and I would love it to be as interactive as possible with the colleagues on the line, so that we can get as much as possible from this discussion. So let me first start by indicating that marriage contract is one of the most important commercial contracts that you'll ever sign in your life, because you are choosing a partner that would take walk the journey with you. You're probably going to have children with them, and then you're going to be linked with their families, for life. So from that perspective, your marriage is a very, very important contract. That has an impact on your business dealings, and that's why we're having this discussion, because it will have an impact on what happens to you and your businesses should your marriage regime change. So when I was doing a bit of research around this case, I thought, I looked and I said, you know what, law in itself is very complicated, let alone the interpretation of the law. Because when a law is created in a vacuum to deal with as a response to some situations that arise between the interaction of people. Now, what happens is that as people interact, they perform in different ways, and that makes the interpretation of the law a bit difficult, and that's why we find ourselves where we are. So I'm going to try to be as simple as possible, but ask questions where we go along. So let's break down what has happened. We have two people that got married in 2011 via customary law. After they got married, in 2019, they decided that they're going to change their marriage regime into an anti-nuptial contract, which they then did. Following that, in 2022, one of the parties filed for divorce from the other one. And that's what has brought this legal action to bear. So those are the facts around this matter. So it's important that we get the facts straight first. Secondly, let's also understand the legal regime in South Africa. So prior to 1994 or so, you had the customary law amongst the indigenous people, the Africans, being dealt differently from how civil marriages were being dealt with, to the extent that customary law was seen as inferior to the civil law. Then that was corrected with what is called the Recognition Act. So the Recognition Act came, its purpose was to manage how the customary law would work, and if you want to change your regime from customary law to civil law, how that should be implemented. So as we sit now in South Africa, you have customary law regime, which has the same status as that of a civil law. Customary law has only one option, which is community of property, but also is the only legal regime that recognizes polygamy. Civil law has community of property, which is the same as customary law, but also has what you call an antenuptial contract. So antenuptial contract, by definition, means a contract that you enter before. Then you have what you call a postnatal contract, which is the one that you do after. So this discussion, we're going to focus on the antenuptial contract. So by definition, you need to enter into it first before you get married. That's what the legal system requires of us. So you can see that on the onset, the parties, when they decided to change their legal marriage regime from customary law into civil law, they then had to follow a certain process that is determined in terms of the Recognition Act. So the Recognition Act says, if you want to change your marital regime from customary law to civil law, whether it's antenuptial contract with with sharing of profit and loss, or with or without the accrual system, you need to follow a certain process. That process also means that you have to approach the court. You can't do it yourself. And you also have to make your creditors aware that you are changing your legal regime. Because remember, when you're married in community of property, there are certain transactions that you cannot enter into without the approval or knowledge of your spouse. So something like buying a car, buying a house, or taking up credit of a significant value. If you're married in community of property, in terms of the Financial Act, you are supposed to have your spouse knowing. If you're married out of community of property, you are acting as a single person within a marriage, and you can enter into any other agreement without approval from your spouse. So you can see that when you move from a community of property scenario into an antenuptial scenario, you already have a marriage regime in existence. Now, part of what the Recognition Act does, it says, we know that through experience that in customary marriages, most of the items are taken or belong to the husband. And the wife, most of the time, they are stay-home mom, or they don't enter into some of these hire purchase agreements. So when you move into an antenuptial contract in an unbalanced scenario like that, it means that each party moves with the assets that they are currently having under the customary law into an antenuptial contract. So in a scenario where most of the items are sitting under the husband, it means the husband will move with most of the property while the wife will remain with very little. Whereas the regime that they had entered into, which was in community of property, dictates that those items must be shared equally between the parties. So the challenge of the Constitutional Court was then to say, did the signing of the antenuptial contract in 2019 cancel the customary law contract that was signed? The Constitutional Court said no. it didn't, because these laws have the same standing in law. These marriages have the same standing in law. There's no one that is inferior to the other one. The second part was that if indeed that the marriage is allowed, is it not contrary to the Recognition Act, which members here can go and read themselves. I don't want to go into those now because we have limited time. And the Constitutional Court says no, it doesn't contravene the Recognition Act, because the Recognition Act actually gives you steps that you need to follow in entering into that agreement. But the court primarily said, although this is not a legal matter, but you have to look into the background why the law says when you change a regime from customary to antenuptial, you have to have that go through a legal system. You have to make the creditors aware, and all of that is because of the imbalance that sometimes exists in customary law marriages. So, in short, colleagues, your customary law has the same standing and status as your civil law. When you want to change from customary law into civil law, there is a process that is determined by the Recognition Act as to what must be followed and done through a legal process to recognize that law. And then what happens is that you are not actually signing an antenuptial contract because you already have a contract in community of property. It becomes a post nuptial contract, which means the affairs as a result of the customary law needs to be managed in a certain way now with a contract being put in place. I hope, Babkawa, I have put it simply in terms of what has happened and what the law says in terms of the standing of the two marriages. Now, we have in our society that people marry via customary law, and then after that, they still go inside. I see a lot of people do that. Now, if you marry by a customary law, you don't have to go and also conclude a civil marriage. In most cases, people do a civil marriage just to have their marriage included as a civil marriage, just for certainty. But in the eyes of the law, those two marriage regimes are the same. There's no one that is inferior on the other, over the other. So why that is important now is that when you are in business, and let's say you are in a polygamous relationship with children and one or two wives or three, your estate planning needs to be managed in a very specific way so that you are able to firstly avoid fights, legal disputes, should you pass away untimely, and you find that your affairs are not sorted and they are not in order. So it's very important that when you are in business and you find yourself in a situation where you either need to change your marital regime or you find yourself in a polygamous marriage, which is totally allowed, you need to make sure that you add the element of estate planning to help you in situations where you pass away. Remembering that in our system, a man is 100% responsible for each and every child that they have, whether that child is born in or outside of your marriage relationship. So even if you are married in a civil marriage, which is a monogamous marriage, any child that you have outside of your marriage, by law, you are going to be responsible for it. That's why you have maintenance courts, and that's why you have situations where someone passes away, and then you have claims from children that the wife did not know about. And then you have issues of paternity tests that are run, and should that be confirmed, it means that the estate of the late husband will then be shared with the other children that the wife would not have known about. So that's a very important element for the colleagues to note. That's why when you marry a woman and she has children, when you marry her, you take over the children and you adopt them legally. That's why you can even change their surnames into your surname, because as a man, you are legally responsible for each and every child that you have or you're taking care of. The other aspect, as I indicated, has to do with your will. So you need to make sure that you deal with how you want your estate to be managed once you are not here. So there are different types of wills that you can enter into. We're not going to go into that. But a will is important, especially when you have a business and there are benefits that will be derived by your loved ones, the ones that you are responsible for, the ones that you're taking care of. So people like our mothers, our fathers, our aunts, by law, if you are taking care of someone, when you pass away and they can go to court and prove that you were taken care of, they will actually be considered as part of the estate of the deceased. So it's very important that we fix our finances while we still have a chance. And as our business grows and develops, we need to make sure that we amend our will, we amend our estate with our estate planners to make sure that they reflect our wishes as the business grows and goes. Similarly, when you decide to take another wife, you need to make sure that those things also get changed or amended as you go along. So let me stop there, Baba, and maybe give the colleagues an opportunity to ask some questions around what I have presented. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mashobane. That is very interesting what you've just said. You are very short and succinct. You still have 15 more minutes, but I'm sure I would receive some questions and engagements from our members. But wait, nanso-ke idubukele. Umbuzo uthi, did you understand what this constitutional court ruling means? Like I said, when we were starting off, ngihlangana namajita athi hayi ngeke sayolobola manje ngoba ngathi khona ngakuqondi kahle. We need to straighten those things and clear them up with some legal expert among us to clear it out really. Mashoman, I asked you a question earlier when we were having a chat that this constitutional court ruling, as much as it's a ruling, but when it comes to customary law and our tradition and ways of doing things, do you perhaps think that, because many people have been saying there needs to be some feeding in process from our traditional leaders and our way of doing things to this Western Dutch law ways of doing things? Do you perhaps see that maybe that should be a case where we enrich the process of the legal environment in South Africa, being an African country, with the house of how we do these lobola things? And you have to do two types of imshado. They will do the Western one and they will do the traditional one. Would you just maybe comment on those two questions I've just cited to you?
Yeah, I agree with you. There should be engagement that takes place from a customary law perspective and cultural perspective, where we engage with our traditional leaders so that they can explain how this development affects them. May I also point that in the run-up to the creation of the Recognition Act and all of that, there was engagement that happened, with the traditional leaders. There are the famous case of Gumede, in terms of they were dealing with the sections of the KwaZulu Act on the Code of Zulu Law, and also the Natal Code of Zulu Law. So those were the acts that used to exist before. that were part of the discussions when the Recognition Act was put in place to recognize polygamous marriages. It's interesting to note that initially the understanding was that all marriages that were entered into previously in terms of the Zulu code customary laws were actually anti-nuptial contracts, but that was something that was put aside to say no, that could not have been the understanding. So there should be engagement because, as I said, your marriage relationship is one of the most important contracts that you'll ever sign in your life. So there should be clear understanding as to what happens. May I also note that, when it comes to polygamous marriages, whilst in a traditional or customary law, you can move from community of property into antinuptial and all of that, where there's a polygamous customary law, that customary law cannot be changed. It can only be dissolved. There is no room, at least there's no clarity in terms of how that should be dealt with. So the only way that you can do that for now is for that marriage to be dissolved. Thanks.
Okay, no, thank you so much. Colleagues, I'm going to open this platform. Uguti, any one of you would like to ask questions and comments, it's your turn. Nyambos,
Yes. Yes, good evening or good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you so much.
Can I meet my brother?
Yes. I just want to ask, what if, let's say you haven't married, but you just paid lobola. Does that mean now, because now we've been hearing that now lobola is now being regarded as marriage, of which is like, to us, that's not how we view it culturally. So now let's say you've paid lobola and then you sign anti-nuptial contract. Maybe you paid half before you then do the celebrations and the handovers, then you sign anti-nuptial contract. Can you proceed to a customary union, or you can only now do civil because you have that anti-nuptial contract in place?
Yeah, I think the important thing is that was the customary law marriage concluded fully? So if it was concluded fully in terms of the process that should be followed, that will then be recognized as law. But if it wasn't concluded, then one cannot argue that you actually are married via customary law. There are different steps in our culture to start or to enforce a customary law process. As we all know that there's cultures that gets followed from the husband's side, from the wife's side, that needs to be concluded. So my point would be that before it is concluded, you need to then do the antinuptial contract before you conclude that process. But most importantly, you must make sure that your spouse is aware of that and your families are also aware of that, because remember, part of the process is that our traditional process is that we include both families when we do this type of ceremony. So again, I would advise that seek advice before you start any of these processes. Because you before you get to the marriage, you get to propose, right? And proposal in itself also has legal consequences. In itself, when you propose someone, it's a promise that you're making that you're gonna marry them, and you are singling them, and you are saying to them, from now on, don't entertain any other man but me, because I am here now and I am choosing you. So that in itself has got consequences in our marriage system. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. May you please clarify the second part of the question, where now let's say
Yeah.
you've done all of that, but now in terms of choosing, now you have that anti-nuptial contract in place, but now are you gonna go for, because now I think, I don't know whether I misunderstood when you said if you are doing customary union, you can't have anti-nuptial contract or something like that. If you can just
Yes.
clarify.
Yeah. Remember now the two laws, the two marriages are the same. They are equal. So if you conclude a customary law, you are then saying you are married in community of property. That's a customary law. It has that effect. So if you're going to marry in a civil way, where you are marrying one person, so it's monogamous, and you want to marry in community of property, those are the same marriages. You're just doing the same thing twice. But if you want to do an anti-nuptial contract, that contract must be concluded before you do any other type of marriage. So you do the anti-nuptial contract first. That's why the anti-nuptial contract gets signed and gets recorded in the deeds office where you record property. The anti-nuptial
Yes.
contract also gets recorded at the deeds office. That's how serious the contract is. So
Yes.
that's what I meant, just to be clear.
Okay, then you conclude the process, then you can still register a customary union.
Now, remember, when you do the anti-nuptial contract, that's a civil union now, right? It's a civil marriage. Customary law has only community of property. It doesn't.
Oh,
Well, yes.
so you
That's
can't
why I
have,
said,
so if you
yeah,
have anti-nuptial contracts, then now you can do a customary union.
I think from a traditional point of view, and this is just my view, right? From a traditional
Yes.
point of view, you can still do the ceremony to show that the two families are joined, but not with the intention of saying now you are concluding a customary law marriage, because you've already signed an anti-nuptial contract, which is a civil law engagement. Remember
Okay.
that your customary law, like I said, only has community of property, but you can change your customary law from community of property into anti-nuptial by following the steps in the Recognition Act, which tells you what you must do to change from customary to the anti-nuptial. But from the onset, if you do anti-nuptial contract, that's a marriage right there.
Okay. Thanks.
No, siyabonga kakhulu mfethu, siyabonga kakhulu for your questions. May I go to Knox, Tabo, and then Sisimpume? Starting with you, Knox.
Thank you, Mr. Club. I'm Knox Kumalo from the Tubela and Kumalo attorneys. The important aspect of what is being discussed is that these decisions are not to be taken lightly, and you need to be intentional when you move to this direction. We also need to make sure that when you start the process of sending Omalume to initiate the process, you have consulted and you understand the implications of what you are doing. Because the other situation you could be faced with is people who think they are starting a process of ukuhlawula, whereas on the other side it's taken as amalobolo. Those are two different things which can never be confused, because if you confuse them, you need the parties to be clear on what it is that they are doing. There are other people who will then commence with amalobolo and not carry it through, change their mind and move to the next woman. You are causing havoc. You are making the whole thing clumsy, because when the previous person comes up and claims that she is married to you, you will have an obligation to prove that you are not married to her. Thanks.
Fully agree. I fully agree. We need to make sure, and that's why Bab Klaba was saying that there is that engagement that has to happen at a traditional level with the community, so that we understand what we are getting ourselves into. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much, Knox, for that point of clarity further. Because let's into ziyadida kakhulu abantu bangena othandweni nje without really understanding the the implications and some of the ramifications that, this thing has once the situation gets sour. So it's Mnandi, and maybe because we're talking here about the business, and all of a sudden there's fights over assets. And you'd find the intention was not to even have those fights. It's just that we did not put our house in order properly way before understanding the landscape of marriage, as it were. Thanks. We really love those contributions from some of the legal minds who are here on this platform. So, Tabo? Right, Tabo, can you unmute?
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yes, we can.
Two questions. The first one, how does one register customary marriage, especially if you're gonna entering into polygamous marriage? Second question is that when let's say before you get married, you've developed your assets and everything, you put them under a trust, whereby your spouses are not beneficiaries, but the kids are, and yourself. What are the implications of that if perhaps you pass on? Are they able to claim an estate, or how does it work? Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's a very a complex question. The second one is very complex because it has, one can ask, for example, you have done a trust. It's a family trust. It's the business trust. And who are the trustees? You've already indicated that you have beneficiaries, which are your children who are in the trust. The other aspect that deals with it as well has to do with the will. How do you have a will? How is the will structured? So that has an impact as well. That's why I was saying that estate planning, when it comes to these things, it's very, very important. But I think by putting a trust together, putting your children, let's say it's children from a polygamous marriage, that's a good start. But then you need to manage it properly, because then if you have children, all children must be included in there, especially those that are in a polygamous relationship. So I would say that with further consultation, one can provide a better answer. But those are some of the points that you'll have to consider when you look at the trust, when you want to get married, especially before you get married. Now, remember, when you get married, before I answer your question, when you get married in a polygamous relationship, the marriage becomes one of community of property. You need to remember that.
Sorry, Mashobane, just unmute yourself. Mashobane. So just unmute yourself. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was
go
not
ahead.
seeing that it's muted. Okay, thank
No,
you.
sure.
So
Sure.
let me start and say that the second question it's a complex one. It's not an easy and it doesn't have an easy answer, because one is to consider the fact that you have a trust. Is the family trust? Is the business trust? What's the purpose of the trust? You've indicated that the children are the beneficiaries. You become the trustee there in the trust. In a polygamous relationship, you need to make sure that, to be fair, you need to include all the children in a trust, so that should something happen, you don't find yourself with legal problems. Before I answer your question, I'd like to just indicate that, remember that a customary polygamous marriage is the one in community of property, which means what you have, you share with your spouses. So that's one thing that you need to remember. So in terms of the registration, there's a process that gets followed that is detailed in terms of the law. That can be provided separately in terms of how that gets done. And the traditional authority plays a role as well in that. So you need to make sure that you follow the recognized steps within the traditional authority that you are entering into this relationship with. So those details are there. They can be provided at a later stage. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tabo. Thanks so much.
And if maybe before we
Yeah.
get to Sisumpomi, to say that, you know, I once assisted a colleague who was, I was helping him through a process at work. And I ended up, you know, getting close to him. And he had a wife married in community of property civil with 2 children. And then he had Mamngane with 1 child. And then he had a child that he had conceived before I got married. So part of my advice to him was that he must do a trust, and that I'm following on Tabo's question. To do a trust, he took care of his children equally, and it might be that some of the ladies did not even know each other. So I said to him, I won't tell you how to manage your affairs, but as far as your children are concerned, make sure that you take care of them. So he created a trust, and he, you know, made sure that he takes care of his children equally. Unbeknown to me is that he was actually going through an illness that ultimately took his life. But fortunately, he was able to put his affairs in order. So when he passed away, through the will, the assets went into the trust, and the kids were able to be taken care of. So, you know, organizing your affairs in such relationships is very, very important. So I think we can take Sisimpumi then, Mr. Klaba.
Thank you so much for that. Yes. For me, okay. I think he's got a problem right there. Mpumi is going to join in. Let's check if we've got other questions on the chat box. Just Mpumi, can you hear? Are you able to
Yes,
speak now?
okay.
Yeah, I'll see you.
Yes, okay.
Go ahead. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, go ahead.
okay. Yep. Okay. Ngisacela ukubuza. Uyazi ngizwe kuthiwa uma ushade i-civil, right? Ubaba wakhe enezingcinza. Le kulo 100% u50% owakho, u50% owezancinza nezingane. Uma benezancinza eziningi kusho ukuthi ingane zogcina sesithola noma u1% yini? Angazi noma ngizwakala yini.
Yeah, yes, yakuza sisi.
Okay.
Yeah. Uma ubaba wasekhaya enezancinza eziningi, zizele zinengane.
Yebo.
Yeah.
Kusho
And then
ukuthi
manje useyashona. Yeah.
Yes. So
Yes.
kusho ukuthi lezi zancinza mase ibuya zonke, kusho ukuthi nezingane zakho ayisatholi lutho ngoba usually abantu besilisa bayafihla.
Yeah.
Okay. Mashawan, I think that's exactly what you and I spoke about.
Yeah, that's very true.
Usesumpume uyayazi lento ukuthi amadoda ayafihla. Go ahead.
Ayafihla, yeah.
Yazi ngobaba umathanga etshitshi.
Okay, umgilitsha, yeah.
Number 2, icela ukubuza ukuthi nangokuba bakufihlile futhi again. Ulobolile walobola. Yabo? Angithi laba abantu abalobolile sebengo-wife.
Yeah.
Right? Njengoba nje sebengo-wife bayabhenefitha futhi nabo. Same thing like izancinza ngithi.
Yeah.
Angithi kufika khona izancinza engalotsholiwe kodwa bezondliwa. Bese bakhona laba abalotsholiwe kodwa mina ngishadile.
Yeah.
Ukuthi kunenkinga futhi nalapho ngoba phela mina bengingazi. Nanokuthi ke lo mthetho lo wokuthi laba abalotsholiwe sebeyabhenefitha kusho ukuthi uqala nini ngoba ngimthandile lo muntu mina ngamshada ngazi ukuthi useke walobola 4 or 5. usuzoku-aplaywa nini ukuthi nabo sebeya-benefita la ngoba mina bengazange ngixoxele nokuthi leso story cause isiZulu sithi umuntu uyashada kuthiwani abe yabo asine ukuthi thina uyena-ke mfazi usuke sezoqoba inyama kanti ngithola ukuthi ubaba ubeseloboleka 5 before mina-ke manje sengizoshada
mhlambe ngakangeni umashobane sesimpumi uba umgileja umathangejeje ubona ngoma ngithi sisimpumi okay ngazi kahle ngazi kahle so ngicela ukubuza uma wena njengomfazi omdala usuke celile indoda ukuthi mhlawumbe ifuna ukuthatha isithembu wanqaba noma mhlambe umane walobona nje ungazi before umashobane comes in
angazi lutho nje ngalaba bantu ngifika kule relationship mina ngizoshada bengingazi ukuthi unabantu abalobolile abawu-5 behambe lobola phele sengigcina banawona ngoba umthetho usuyasho phela ukuthi njengoba balobolile bekuwumshado bekumshado
okay no siyabonga kasethe lo mashobane ngasiphawulela mashobane.
Yeah, no, I think Babxaba, it's a very serious situation and it will need to be dealt with properly, right? We cannot give a proper analysis or even advice at this stage. Safe to say that by law, all the children that belong to the husband need to benefit from the husband when he passes away. But remember now, there are other things that come into play. How old are these children? So normally the minor children are the ones that are considered, more than the major children. But again, that differs because if the person who passes away is a millionaire, even the major children will come into the fray and say, no, we also want part of the estate. But again, Mr. Kaba, there is also a limitation as well in terms of when the estate is small, there's also a limitation as to how much can be claimed, to what extent. So there are many things that come into play in terms of the amounts. And as I hear, Usisi Mpumi was saying, the estate will be left with nothing as far as the husband is concerned, because now there's so many children that are coming up and they also have a right to claim. So Mpumi is not as simple as that. We have to look into the situation and be able to advise properly based on the correct circumstances. Like I said, the age of the children, the value of the estate, and things like that. When it comes to the other women, wabalobola before, that is another tricky one. Again, we need to look at the circumstances, we need to look at the information. And like my other colleague was saying, was that a lobolo or was it just something else? Was it concluded? How was it concluded? Are all of those following customary law, which means they are all polygamous customary marriages, which means it will be in community of property. So those are the things that we have to look at. So I don't have an easy answer for you without looking at those circumstances properly. I can only comment with the little information that you have, but it will be a very a serious situation that needs to be considered properly. And more importantly, in terms of what do you want out of this process? What is the end result? Do you have children? How many children do you have? How have you structured your affairs within the family? Are you the one who's taking out the loans? Are the cars in your name? Is the house in his name, or is the house in your name? All of those things have a bearing on how this thing can be resolved.
Ogcina how to protect, how to open i-trust-ke ngoba manje ngiyabona ukuthi ngoba izancinza ziningi ngcono ngisenginika ingane zami ifa. Ulwa kanjani-ke i-trust?
Yeah, you can open. Remember, in terms of the law, as a woman, you are taking care of your children, so you are well within your rights to do that. But remember, there are other laws that could be competing with your children's rights, as I've indicated. So we'll have to look at the whole situation properly, ma'am, before we can say what is the right course of action. But doing a trust is one of the options that you have on the table. Yeah.
Siyabonga, uyosiza ukuthi uvule kanjani, ngiyabonga.
Okay.
Yeah, no. So basically, bhekisisa leyo, I think ibalulekile kakhulu. Bengishilo kumashobani ukuthi the realities out there are such that abanye abantu, due to whatever circumstances abasuke bedlula kuzona, they do not disclose, and uthola ukuthi iy'ngane seziyahlupheka or iy'ngane seziyexabana, kuyaliwa ekugcineni, indoda ayisekho ukuthi izoxazulula le nkinga. Njengoba kade esho Simpume, indoda ilobola abafazi abawu-5, unkosikazi omdala ebengazi, or unkosikazi omdala uthola ukuthi indoda ukuthi ithathe isithembu, and therefore indoda bese iphoqeleka ukuthi iyohlonipha emzini yamadoda kwenye indawo Nicodemus. But bese kuhamba kube khona iy'nkinga ey'nkulu ey'khona ey'velayo ngoba angiswanga ngohlelo lesintu. Mhlawumbe abanye babanjwe ukuthi bayakholwa ngenxa yokuthi isikholwa sithi akwenzeki kanje, mhlawumbe kungcono uma bekholwa kodwa bengamaNazaretha ngoba kuba lula. So kuney'nto ey'ningi ezama-complications akhona. Kade ngibuke elinye i-article yomunye umholi webandla elidumile lase-LCC. I'm sure some of you have seen that article right now. It talks about a whole lot of things ngoba abantu bonke they go through that stuff. Kanti kubalulekile nje ukuthi sizane in this journey of life. How do you properly take care of iy'ngane zingabi ondingasithebeni? So siyabonga, ngicela amashomani makhona, if you see some questions on the chat box, just attempt to answer them as well. I see Pretty says, thank you for this important session. My clarity seeking question is about postnatal contract. Does this process has the options to accruals? What steps should be in fulfillment? Alongside that, there's another one by my brother in the States. If a couple will the pastors be compelled to share and advise the bride and groom during their marriage counseling about this change in the law pertaining to their marriage? You can take those two, my brother.
Yeah, so let's start with the last one. So yes, it is advisable that the pastors do advise couples when they do get married in light of the constitutional court hearing. It has a direct impact on them. It's very important to take that into account. So I would advise that yes, they should advise the parties in terms of not only the constitutional court ruling, but in terms of what it means to enter into what type of a marriage relationship. And the parties must be very clear as to what is it that they want to do and how they want to conduct their affairs. That will dictate what marriage they should enter into. And then in terms of the accrual, yes. So you have your antenuptial contract with or without accrual, with sharing of profit or loss or not. So yes, those are the options that are there. And again, you need to understand what that means because if you are in a marriage and you let's say professionals, and you are married in antenuptial contract without the accrual system, it means what is yours, what is his is his. Should a divorce come along, you just walk out with what you have. So those are the things that should be considered. If you are in business as well, you look at the sharing of profit and losses. Because sometimes, Babklaba, you find that the husband is the one that goes out, does the business, and their estate accrues more than the wife's estate. So, those are the things that need to be really taken into account. So, yes, when you do get proper advice in terms of what type of regime you want, particularly because we are talking about business here, this is a business forum. We need to make sure that that regime takes account of how you want to manage your business affairs and secure your family. Because the last thing that you want is that if your business gets sour, you don't want your family to be without a house or to be without vehicles that they are driving, and you're not able to make a living. So those are the things that you really need to consider very seriously when you look into the antenuptial contract in line with your business preferences. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And sorry, Mhlo. I see Mhlo.
Nonkosi angibingelele ngicela ukucheck nje into encane la angazi mhlambe ihamba kanjani. Nginosisi wami owashada 2 years kumshado wakhe umkhwenyana wathi no akalinga komqosha wayehambela kusisi wami just stage wayitholela ingane esihambeni manje umshado uzwabhala konke umshado wasekhaya wasuqeda uhamba ubhale home affairs so ulokhu umshado ukhona ungalokhuzana mefisa ukuphuma upha kanjani kunayiphi impact kwenzakalani kuyaphumeka kule noma kuphumeki umkhwenyana usuyayiqhubeka nempilo nawe iqhubekela nempilo kodwa manje ke kunalo mshado se home affairs ngiyabonga.
Babklab, just to help me, did he say that the marriage got registered at Home Affairs or not?
I'm sure. Angithi did the marriage get registered? Mhlo?
Yes, wa register.
It's umshado wokuqala wawukhona phakathi kasisi wakho nomkhwenyana, and then base beyahlukana. But manje awunalifayeka lo munye umshado. Yeah.
No, bavele bashada ngesintu base beyabhala. So ilokhu kwabe lo mshado lo kodwa bahlukana after 2 years.
Okay. Yes.
All right.
So you got it, Mashallah.
So my understanding is that they got married traditionally, and then they followed that up with a civil marriage, right? So,
yes.
So basically, they did the same thing twice. That's what I was talking about earlier. So they did the same thing twice because the two marriages have equal standing. So if you marry in community, if you marry traditionally, it's in community of property. So my question to him is, so obviously when they got to Home Affairs and signed, it was a civil marriage in community of property. So it's like doing the same thing twice. So in terms of separation, they are then supposed to have a formal process on how they deal with the separation. So my understanding, Butuam, is that they never, did they initiate any divorce proceedings, or they just there's no process followed, nothing like that. And then Usiswako, did she take some of the common property or not, or was Hambelanje?
So we told that question.
You are muted, Babklab.
I don't know whether the question here.
Yeah, okay. That was just a follow-up. Yeah, to say, if she just left the place, look, it depends on people, Babklab. Some people, when the marriage ends, some partners decide, you know what, I'm just going to leave everything. I'm going to move on and start my own life. It's their decision to take, as opposed to someone who wants some of the property and is being refused, access or process to get that property. So that's different. But if someone just moves and decides to start their life afresh, they're entitled to do so, and they leave everything behind. Some people feel that way. But if she wants, if she wants to get some of the property, then there's a process that she needs to follow, because, and that brings another aspect when Mr. Klavane, we have a lot of these situations in the country where people separate, but they never divorce. And this thing stays like this for many, many years. We have lots of situations like this in the country. And then when one of them passes away, that's when the trouble starts. Because legally, then you become responsible for things that you are not even part of anymore. So it's very important that the sister finalizes the divorce so that she can move on with her life. Because if they don't, it's also going to hamper her. Because if later she meets someone that she wants to get married to, she won't be able to because she's still married. And that marriage that she would want to enter into will be null and void, will be wrong in law. She will then have to start divorce proceedings at that stage, which is a problem. Yeah.
No, thanks, Madam. I think that's very. Since we are towards the end of our program, literally 4 minutes, I see Blackman. His hand is up. Can you unmute my brother as we wind? Before we wind down, Blackman, unmute. Thank you. Okay. Unox says also if the chap can come 50%. Okay.
Ungangena. Yebo ke. Into engicela ukuyibuza lana right-ke kulungile-ke. Angithi nanga umuntu uyahamba kuyalobola, makaceda ukulobola bayabuya-ke mhlambe kuba nokuthi
Hello, Blackman, Shengu? We can't hear you.
Blackman, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can. Thank you.
Yes.
Ya no, bengibuza ukuthi mangabe kwenzakala mhlawumbe uthola ukuthi kukhishwa amalobolo, makukhishwa amalobolo and then kwafikwa nje ekhaya bafike walotsholwa baphuma abantu bahamba, and then after that ke sengicela ukwazi ukuthi leyo part leyo isuke wumshado na, or manihlukane seniyekene nje fanele niye kamuhle noma manihlukanele nje ku right nalapho.
Okay, thank you Msheng. Manu wafika walobola nje kuphela wahamba nayihlukanele sekumshado lo sungabanze tu ushadile.
Yeah. Yeah, I think people do funny things in this world. I think that the crux of the matter is that the process needs to be followed to the end, as per the traditional wedding process or ceremony, if I can call it that. So if that is followed to the end, Babklaba, it is what it is, that's the process. But again, like I said in the beginning, the problem with law is human behavior. The law itself does not have a problem, but people do things in funny ways, which creates a problem for the interpretation.
Okay, but this question, Gamshemu, iti, I go and pay lobola, and I don't follow through all the way to the end. Let's say I just pay lobola to women X, and I make up my mind. I'm not gonna continue. So it ends up in just paying lobola. There's no traditional dance and ceremony to lobola process. Would you paying lobola and it's incomplete?
Yeah, I think that's what my other sister was saying from the other lawyers, that people must be careful what they start, you know, and you need to see things through. You can't just come, because then you bring confusion, because we don't know where you are standing. Are you still proceeding with this thing? You know, is it finished? What the situation is. So that's why my stance would be, if we follow the process that needs to be followed thoroughly, if that process is not followed thoroughly to the end, one cannot consider that as a fully completed a marriage in terms of that customary law. Yes, there is the intention to get married, but I don't think that it follows that.
It's not full marriage yet. And
It's
Knox,
not
would
full
you
marriage.
like to say something there as well? I think it's a very interesting one, because I may
Yeah.
just lobola and then don't continue because I've lost interest in the process, right? Interesting. Okay.
I'll just like to deal with the question here before we conclude, to say that the question is also, if sister passes away, the chap can come and claim his 50% of the estate. Like I said, you need to see through to the divorce, right? Walking away from someone is not a solution. Babkaba, you are muted, ne? You are muted, ne? So walking away is not a solution in itself. You need to see the process through. Just as a closure, I once had a client who was a lady that we did a divorce for. After we did the divorce, she was so happy to be away from that partner and to be free, that she never finalized the process of finalizing the things like the pension fund, the policies, and things like that. So I then kept on saying to her, you need to go and change your policies and your pension fund, because remember, your pension fund, retirement fund work on a different set of law. If someone is written as a beneficiary and nothing else gets done to update them, that person becomes a beneficiary. Lo and behold, unfortunately, that client of mine passed away and she had not done those changes. Mr. Klaba, that ex-husband benefited from her pension funds, and he used that money to lobola a new wife with that money, although they were divorced. So we need to be very careful when we do these things, and we need to make sure that we consult and we follow through. So the sister needs to finalize the divorce, because you are right. 50% of her estate, should she be successful, he's going to come back for it, because they're still married. Yes, we can argue in court that you are separated and all of those, that's something that the court can consider. But it's very important to finalize these processes. Thanks. I see Unox
thank you
is
so
here.
much. That's very, very
Unox
important.
is here.
Yeah, Knox and then Lungisani.
Thanks, Mr. Klaba. In response to what you were asking me, yes, the unfinished lobola business will pose a problem, because the intention of the parties was to get married. The gentleman needs to go back and say he is no longer keen on proceeding with this matter, and that needs to be documented. As my brother will confirm, when you do your lobola negotiations, in fact, anyone who's participating here, you keep notes. Those notes are a legal document, evidence that you present in court that indeed these processes took place. There was an intention for this. There was a meeting of the minds on these issues, and you use that matter when the disputes come up. That is your basis for your defense, on whichever angle you're coming from. So what I was saying, it's wrong of us to leave matters hanging, because it becomes very clumsy.
Well, thank you so much. I think that's you're an agreement right there. That don't leave things clumsy. The matters. Babtagas.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. I think I'm partly covered by the last speaker, because I wanted to say that the issue of Lobolo was not sufficiently covered, the question that was raised. Because it seems that the understanding of the Constitutional Court is that once you pay Lobola, whether partly or in full, you are married customarily, and therefore you need to divorce.
which means that if you go get married to someone else, you die, that lady that you paid a lobola to can come and claim from your estate. But I hear the lawyer saying that at least these things must be documented, that I had this intention, but I no longer intend to, and then there must be documents. I'm not sure, but the documents, but the other part, if there's no cooperation from the lady that I paid part lobola to, it may still be, I may still be compelled, because there must be an understanding between the two parties that we must sign a document, according to the last speaker, to say that we intended to marry, but we're not marrying anymore, so that should anything happen, there should be no claim to my estate.
Not only that, Lungisani, you might want to get married to someone else, and that woman comes and says, but I'm married to you. You can't get married to someone else. That's also a possibility.
Yeah. Okay. No, thanks for clarity. Yeah, go ahead.
So, sorry, Mr. Klava, as a quick follow-up to that, because the speaker said that all the processes must be followed to the latter. My concern is that there's no clear understanding by the Constitutional Court of our customs. Because if you pay lobola, I mean, that is the step number 2 from ucela. Then you if unless you do it at the same. So we have not followed everything. There's not a wedding. There is no wedding, because the argument that Mkhonyana is not even there when the negotiators are sent there to the family. So there's still that gray area. I don't know how that will be resolved. Thank you.
Well, I think that's a gray area that we're talking about, Mashoba. Say, in our traditions, you go Cela, you ask for a hand, you formalize from Cela, you then move to Lobola. Then from Lobola, Lobola is not the Umshad. So since you move to Umshad, where now there is bringing together of the families officiating this thing, kuyiwe sibayeni laba observer that umshado wesintu umuntu athelwe ngenyongo umlobokazi. So and then thereafter the whole process is complete. So you can't just say by simple going of ucela and lobola say umshado so complete, because what if someone decides at that point that now I'm no longer continuing? And as clumsy as that process may be, it is not complete. It's just me deciding, Nguti, I'm ending this relationship, or the lady, she's ending this relationship, or she has seen somebody else, as it happens in life. So, so legally, is that really something that constitutionally stands as umshado? So that's what I think Ubab Kawaza is as well explaining.
Absolutely, I agree.
Yeah. Bamkawaza. So I see your hand. I'm sure that's an old hand. Yeah. Go ahead, Bam.
Yeah, I'll lower it.
Okay, that's fine. I do think that we need to kind of have more sessions to look into some of those things going forward. Like we said, we're starting a series, and I think we are going to have to revisit some of these things. We're not necessarily getting into much of the legal stuff around umshado per se. It's all because of we are trying to find a way of balancing ourselves up in terms of the businesses that we run and what happens thereafter, the wealth that we are creating, and all of those types of things. There's something that I think Ubab Kumar will have to discuss with us next time, which we spoke about offline, of a billionaire or a very rich man who said, my children can only inherit, once they have not made more than 100 million, as an example. If they've made more than that, so you don't have to inherit anything out of my billion rand empire, because you are now well off and you're well sustained. I think all of those things and other examples that I hope he can bring going forward are very crucial for us to think these things through and to apply ourselves.
Ready. So I'm just going to cook them a bit with
apply ourselves carefully in terms of the businesses that we are building, the relationships that we get into, so that we really go in there with both our eyes opened, both male and female, and be in a position to, craft these agreements in a very wise way to protect the wealth that we're creating for our generation. But Mashawan, before I let you go, perhaps you'd like to say something as your parting shot on this very first series, which you've covered very, very well.
No, thank Bob Klaba. I think the idea was just to do an overview of the Constitutional Court ruling, just an overview of our different regimes, but most importantly, as you just indicated now, the focus here is how these things feature into the businesses that we are involved in. And like I said, issues of estate planning, issues of wills, issues of trust are very important when we are busy building a legacy and to make sure that our monies are managed properly. And as you were saying in that example of the billionaire who said, any child of mine who gets married must marry antenuptial contract. If you don't marry via antenuptial contract, you are not going to benefit from my estate. That was one of the things that he said in his estate. And then he said, any child who by my time of my death has made more than 100 million is not going to benefit from my estate because they are already well off and can take care of themselves. So that's just an example of how you manage your estate and your finances. Thank you very much for the invite, and I look forward to further engaging. We can segmentize the discussion around business in terms of how we manage our marriage relationships and factor them into our business arrangements. Thank you.
Mashawan,
and thank you to the colleagues.
Before you go, how do people reach out to you as an advisor firm?
There is the details. I think you can share them, Babkaba, with the colleagues. They can reach us via our website. They can go and inquire. They can also send me an email. My email address is there in the information I've provided you with, or they can drop me a WhatsApp, and then we can definitely take it from there. Thank you.
Okay, so the email address is coo@mashobane.com. coo@mashobane.com. And the website is www.mashobane.com. Thank you so much, Sifanelo, for really hosting that. Appreciate that. And the number as well, I think he has put there. And that brings us to the end, exactly at 6:45, as we said, we would like to end. It's almost 6:30, 6:43. We are going to have more of these sessions going forward. And the next week and other weeks, we'll sort of like pair some of the sessions together. Like we'll be talking cassava. Our cassava business is very much ripening, and a whole lot of other things that have to do with how do we ramp up on the economy and economic activity in our country. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. And Mashobane,
thank you very much.
Really coming through. I know next time you're going to come, and not next time, make sure that we really engage with you legal people and help us to drive this forward. Appreciate it.
Thank
Good
you.
evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Have a great week ahead, and look at Zoom, not Zoom, man. What's this? YouTube, Amanda, not on TV, on YouTube, and make sure that you subscribe. Appreciate it. A good week ahead.
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening.
Bye. Good evening.